Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two voice devs. How you doing, Mark?
Oh, doing well. I'm kind of doing something a little bit different over here than my typical voice stuff. I'm looking at chatbots.
Chatbots. And well, okay, that's not too far off of voice stuff. What are how do you see them as different from chatbot or different from voice, I guess is the question. How do you define a
Well,
chatbot?
well, that's interesting because I was thinking about it, and this is overly simplistic, but I would say that a voice assistant is basically a chatbot that has audio input with speech recognition and text to speech with audio output added on either end.
So the voice one has additional modalities from a text chatbot.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll buy that.
So
Thinking about it though, I think about some of the chatbots that are in like Slack, for example, and
mhm.
they've got some different characteristics. Sometimes they're more command line or have more of a command line feel to them. Um, but they don't have to. You're right. They can be much more natural language in some cases.
Yeah. So and I think maybe the first one of the first things to talk about is like channels. You mentioned Slack. So you could put a chat bot in all kinds of different
Oh yeah.
places. It could be Slack, it could be text, it could SMS, it could be Facebook. It could be on a website, it could be in a mobile app. There's lots of different places that you could do that, which got me down a little bit of a rabbit hole about the history. So I was looking mostly at Microsoft technology. I hadn't looked at that lately, and kind of was like, what are the different chatbot or generally bot solutions that are available for Microsoft, which led me to a reference to BotKit, which then referenced kind of like, BotKit came out, let's see, in 2015, and then it was acquired by Microsoft in 2018. And then that started thinking me like, oh, that was kind of like the era of acquiring
Yeah.
open source or other systems out. That's the same time frame where Facebook acquired wit.ai.
Uh-huh.
Same one
And
where kind of
and when Google acquired API.ai and later renamed
yeah,
it to Dialogflow, yeah.
yeah. So I'm just kind of like, wow, those were kind of like the early days, and that's kind of when I first started learning about voice and Alexa and kind of getting involved with things. And so even though this is voice devs, I think chatbots are kind of a close cousin, and there's lots of similarities that can be drawn from both of those.
No, definitely. I mean, considering in the early days of Google's with the assistant, one of your options was to use Dialogflow. And Dialogflow itself was kind of billing itself as, developed for all of these platforms, ranging from, the assistant to Slack to, do everything through this platform.
Right.
Um, well, we'll have to talk about Dialogflow and where it is now some other time. Not tonight, I don't think, but some other time.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just kind of share with you some of the things that I've learned. There is just a lot going on the Microsoft side as far as bots and kind of a history and maybe even an evolution of things. So like the first thing I saw was Microsoft's bot framework SDK, and that's a code solution, and that's kind of a lot closer to what I'm used to using. Something like Jovo that I'm using that can be used for both voice and chatbots,
Hmm.
or even Alexa Skills Kit that's specific for Alexa skills, but they kind of have the same feel to them. It's a code approach. There are multiple language platforms to choose from. You can do C sharp, .NET stuff. You can do JavaScript. They also have Java and what is the other one? Is it Python? Yes, but those are actually being deprecated at the end of this year. So they're really only focusing on the .NET and JavaScript SDKs for the Microsoft Bot Framework.
That's not too surprising, I suppose, given Microsoft and what's commonly used out there.
Yeah.
Um, and again, now these frameworks, they're do they need to run on Azure? Can you just run them in your own server and it's just, it's an HTTPS call, or how does it work?
Yeah, so you can host this bot, Microsoft Bot Service bot anywhere. It's very similar to how you can host Alexa skills and
Okay, so you
whatnot.
can set up a webhook.
But likely you'll do it in Azure. And then there's the Azure Bot Service, which is kind of the service inside of Azure that says, connect this bot code at this endpoint to this channel or channels, which could be Slack or Messenger or
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's kind of the registration and connection of channels to a bot is kind of what the bot service gives you. Now, if you're wanting to do some sort of natural language processing or understanding for your bot, then that would be where you would use something like Microsoft Luis, which has been around for a number of years.
I remember Luis.
But it's actually getting deprecated itself, and they're moving to something called Azure Cognitive Services for language.
No, that's interesting. Now, if I remember Luis correctly, it mostly worked as the NLU layer, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of how you would make the bot understand more what you're saying, as opposed to being kind of like specifically command driven or something. You get some variations, or you can type different things that it would understand, and same type of things, figure out the intent and the entities that is
right, and come up with do the slot filling, or identify slots and fill them in. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of very very similar, or comfortable for the type of stuff that I'm used to doing. But I don't know, then it gets a little then it kind of gets a little bit different. There's also a tool that you can download called the Bot Framework Composer, and it's kind of a diagramming tool, but it generates a code project. But I haven't gotten into it enough to understand what the code is that they're generating off of this composer diagramming tool.
Now, when you say it's a diagramming tool, are we talking like a state machine, a conversation flow type diagramming tool?
Yeah.
Okay.
So something like what you would expect to see, like in voice flow, or like a flow chart, or with conditional branching and some stuff.
Okay.
So that's, I think they're trying to address that you can do this if you're a developer, but maybe there's also some tools where you don't have to be such a powerful or experienced developer to do it. But that's not really the main focus of the composer. But
it sounds like, and this is me without seeing the composer, it sounds like it's addressing some of what Dialogflow is addressing as well with their latest version, which was addressing kind of what VoiceFlow was doing.
Yeah.
And that's have these these conversational flows, these conversational states, and make it so that you didn't need to be a developer, but that you could be a designer that was managing the conversation flow. I don't have a better way to put it, honestly. So it sounds like that's what the composer is trying to do.
Yeah.
And then integrate in some way with the back end.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's more configuration that's being saved to these files, and then there's kind of like things that are reading this JSON file or whatever it is that's representative of what you did on the diagramming canvas, and then kind of figure that out. Or so I'll have to do that a little bit more research on that. If you're got experience, if you're watching this and you have more experience with specifically the Bot Framework Composer, would love to hear some additional comments and feedback and insights from you on that. But that's kind of how the Bot Framework SDK works. Now, with chatbots, you can have text response, right? But you can also have some sort of a UI, some sort of like cards or carousels or quick replies, or little, I don't know what they
Car-
would call them, widgets. In some cases might call them
right,
widgets.
widgets, sometimes checkboxes, sometimes,
Yeah,
very simple forms. I mean, these aren't meant for
yeah.
complicated forms though.
So I
Or
had come
sending back
across,
images, just
yeah,
simple card stuff.
yeah, images, but it could be even more complex. Like, oh, I'm going to represent a flight status. Like, here's the to city and the from, and you got an airplane icon, and you've got different sizes fonts and the airport code, and or it could be a
Mhm.
weather app that has an icon that represents what the weather is like and temperature, and but so it can get a little bit fancy. um and I had come across this years ago as well, but just then found it again when I was looking at this stuff is this website for Microsoft called Adaptive Cards. Now, interestingly enough, Adaptive Cards in some ways looks like APL. You have these,
Ah!
yeah, I was like, and yet another technology, but you can, define here's a layout, and it's going to be a column layout, and you're going to have an image here, and you're going to have a font with this, and it has this ability to um, have a data payload that then is bound. So you do data binding using this data binding syntax. There's even this special one called when, which you can use for conditional. If you're going to conditionally show something or hide something. So I'm like, this is very interesting. That so that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of the whole thing I found out about specifically about the bot framework. Do you have any questions? I don't know if I'll be able to answer. That's kind of the
So
level I was researching it at, but
I think, I guess one of the questions I have about the cards especially is, what clients are they meant to work with? Because we talked about the fact that
mhm.
there are multiple, when you're dealing with a bot, one of the good things is you can do multiple integrations from SMS, which has no, you've got text and you're lucky,
Yeah,
or, to Slack, which has some rich media to it, or, in some cases you could go create your own website integration and, maybe do whatever you want when a message comes in.
yeah. So they're okay. So I haven't looked that up, but on this there's this Adaptive Cards SDK. They've got JavaScript listed, .NET WPF, .NET HTML, Windows UWP, Android, and iOS. Um,
Okay.
so I would think that those would be all the different platforms where you could render these, and there's probably different versions
So
um,
so that
of
would
the
suggest, certainly it means that if you're building your own chat client to work with it,
yeah,
that you're able to render whatever you want, however you want.
yeah,
That's pretty powerful.
yeah. So it's kind of I think very similar to what was is trying to be achieved by Alexa presentation language, though it's obviously it's Alexa specific, but can work on across multiple Echo Show devices. So I think it's taking that and then saying, well, but we also have HTML, and you also have this, and you also have that. So um, you can render APL in like a website. That's what APL.ninja does.
Yeah.
Um, so I think in some ways there's a lot of similarities. It's just that there hasn't necessarily been an interest in bringing the APL to a broader audience of platforms. Yeah.
Well, I think also Amazon likes the control. They're able
Oh
to
yeah. Oh
say,
yeah.
you know, we're doing this for these screen sizes and we don't need to support other screen sizes. And when we support another screen size, then we'll roll out the new version of APL.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, they're very much in control. And this seems like maybe it's a little bit more open.
yeah.
Um, so, but that's not the only bot solution that you have if you're wanting to work with Microsoft.
This sounds like Google. Okay.
So I'll kind of go to one extreme. Um, So if you want to do something with in the medical healthcare area, there is an Azure Health Bot. And it's a completely different product. And
This does sound like Google. Okay.
yeah, and when you create an Azure Health Bot, you get like a portal, a web portal where you can go and manage, you can control it, and there's built-in scenarios. So it's once again, it's a low-code tool that it's got a diagram, a different diagramming tool that allows you to lay out the different flows of different things. And there are some built-in scenarios. So like if you want to do a triage or symptom checker, like, hey, I've got a headache and my back hurts or something like that. Then it's like, oh, and then ask you different questions and walk you through there. Or it could even be like a mental health checkup. There's a built-in scenario for that where it will ask you some different questions based on certain questionnaires. All that is when you say I want one of these built-in scenarios, it lays and splats out the whole diagram for you for that. So it's pre-made. It's got some pre-made NLU stuff in it. Yeah.
Hang on a second. You just said lays out a whole diagram for you. So what is this again? Another conversation flow tool?
Yes, it is. Yet another conversation flow tool.
Okay.
Diagramming. Yeah. So you can do health information like tell me about diabetes or what is, valley fever or, right?
Uh-huh.
You can do a find a doctor type, which means like what kind of doctor treats diabetes, and they'll tell you, oh, that is such and such. And there's some COVID ones built in. But you can do your own custom scenario. So you can take those diagrams and add your own bubbles and arrows and build out things like with your health plan. What are the options with my health plan? What's my coverage limits? What's my family maximum? Whatever. You can find doctors or providers. You can schedule appointments. So you've got a lot of flexibility. I don't know about a lot of flexibility. You've got the ability to do custom scenarios. I just don't know how easy that would be. There are some advantages, when you're targeting a tool like this, then you're obviously not targeting the development community. You're you're trying to target like the HR department or the customer service department or
well, again,
like
you're going into a low code scenario.
Yeah.
So, presumably there's you get to do a lot of the design, and at some point you're going to hit a wall and call in a developer to integrate with your design.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. So that they created a product that is that narrow.
Yeah.
But I guess it's understandable why it is that narrow. I mean, health is something that requires extra regulation and care and security, and at least in the US,
PHI, HIPAA. So yeah, and it's very specific, health bot, because the third thing we'll talk about, Power Virtual Agents. There's actually a whole half-page disclaimer is like, this is not to be used for a health situation. This is not to be integrated with 911. This is not, it's very much saying do not use this for healthcare. So there's probably some things on the back end on how data is stored and whatnot. That's very specifically health in the Azure Health Bot. That's not necessarily in the other scenario. So, any other questions on Azure Health Bot?
No.
All right. The last one is the kind of the new kid on the block. It is Power Virtual Agents, and it is a no code to start kind of low code tool.
Okay.
But I need to research it a little bit more, but it's yet again a different diagramming tool where you can create your different flow paths and different things for your chatbot. But there was a part where it said that it can integrate with Azure Cognitive Services and Bot Framework. So seems like maybe they're making a way that you can do the easy stuff in this tool, and then maybe some customizations or some of the flows that are more complicated, you can integrate with bot framework. I haven't explored that side of things, but at least that's what, you know, the language in this video indicated is that you could integrate those things into it. So you can start off with, you know, and I actually even just went through and created a very simple like store open hours for something with Power Virtual Agent. It was you know, pretty easy to do, but once again, what do you do when you have more, you know, complex scenarios and things that makes it more challenging. It also is integrated with, I guess there's a whole Power Platform that Microsoft has, and there's connectors that for other like backend systems. So you can use all the same channels that you had for the Azure Bot framework. So you've got a lot of different channels on the beginning of like how you can get the input into your virtual agent, and then you might want to talk to some backend system, you know, various backend systems, and there's connectors for helping you integrate with that. So, and it's kind of targeted towards these Power multidisciplinary teams where, you know, you might have just one dev or a part-time dev on it, but you've got, you know, business subject matter experts and, you know, content creators and things like that on there. And so it's more targeted towards those types of teams as opposed to, you know, like a development team handing it off to some other team.
Okay. So lots of different options that you're still weeding through, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, and it's been, you know, a number of hours of, well, installing things, trying stuff out, watching videos, reading through documentations. It's a little bit overwhelming when you're like, hey, what can Microsoft do when it comes to bots? Then you're just kind of like, and having to come through it. So that's why I felt like it would be good to, you know, it's still fairly high level, but it would be a good introduction to other developers to just understand what's out there on the Microsoft side of things.
Yeah. No, and we don't talk about Microsoft and Azure nearly enough. You know, we do tend to hover around Amazon and Google a lot, and it's important to know that Microsoft is in the same space in some of these parts.
Yeah, very much so, and you know, and that's kind of like my life before Alexa was you know, decades of Microsoft development. So it was kind of fun to go back to that and see what Microsoft's doing. They're, you know, good company. They've got you know, smart people working on some of these same problems.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is going to be something we'll be visiting again in the future, and you know, we'll probably also take a look at what Google's doing with Dialogflow and some of its other components, and probably at some point revisit what Amazon is doing for these components as well. So if folks have thoughts on any of this, you know, have experience with any of it, certainly love to hear what your experience have been. Love to hear your perspective. Can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, comments below, all the usual locations. Anything else, Mark?
Nope. Just thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you on another episode of Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, everyone. Hope you have a good week.
All right. Take care.